Good evening. My name is Charles Parasino, and I will be moderating tonight's telephone town hall with Congressman John Larson and special guest, Connecticut Department of Social Services Commissioner Andrea Barton Reeves. Thank you for joining tonight's interactive Access Live event. This evening, Representative John Larson will be taking your questions and discussing the ongoing government shutdown. As I mentioned, this is an interactive forum, and we would love to hear from you. We will be taking as many questions from participants as we possibly can live tonight on this event. If you have a question, you can press star 3 on your phone keypad at any time, and you will be placed in line to speak. The next time you hear your name, you will be live on the call, and you will be able to ask your question directly. If you are joining us online, you can submit your question in the form below the live stream video. Representative Larson will do his best to answer as many questions as we possibly can this evening. If he is not able to address your question tonight, please call 860-278-8888 and leave a message along with your phone number or email address. Staff will listen to your voicemail and get back to you with an answer to your question. Again, if you have any questions throughout the event, please press star 3 on your keypad. And to sign up for Representative Larson's newsletter to receive updates and information about future events like tonight's telephone town hall, press star 6 on your keypad. Now I will turn it over to Congressman John Larson.
Well, thank you, Charles. And again, I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us this evening. And I'm especially proud that we're fortunate to have with us Commissioner Andrea Barton Reeves, who is a pretty remarkable individual in and of herself, along with being an outstanding commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Social Services. And I know you're going to find what she has to say helpful as well. We are now in the 23rd day of a government shutdown, and as has been our role, as I see it, is to make sure that we keep our constituents informed of what's going on and what's transpiring on a day-to-day basis. And for some people, just an understanding of how these shutdowns occur, etc., what's at stake, and what are the implications of that as well. But most importantly, during these shutdowns, if you're having trouble with any federal agency, or you have any issue or question, please reach out to our office at 860-278-8888. Oftentimes, it can be confusing, and basically what the federal government has been doing in terms of limiting access is, I believe, atrocious. And it makes it more difficult for constituents to get answer and, most importantly, to get help. We also want to make you aware of, from a practical standpoint, of what's open, what's continuing, where you can go to get help, and then also give you a layout of where things are. Many have asked during this time, what is a government shutdown and how did we get here? Well, practically, a government shutdown occurs when no new funding has been approved by the Congress. Each year, Congress must approve funding for the upcoming year by September the 30th. When Congress doesn't act by that date, government is shut down. And so since October the 1st, because Congress did not act, the government has been shut down. This is the third shutdown under Donald Trump's presidency, the longest of which lasted 35 days. There was one shutdown under Obama, and again, you might see a similarity here in issues when the Republicans attempted to defund the Affordable Care Act, etc. That was beaten back, and the Affordable Care Act went into place. This shutdown, in part, deals with the lack of the Republicans' ability to recognize that more than 16 million people will be losing their health insurance coverage, and millions of others will see their health insurance cost rise. Not simply the people impacted by the Affordable Care Act, but also people who have health insurance in general. Because, as I'm sure the commissioner might relay as well, hospitals are still required to make sure that they provide care for citizens who don't have insurance. Where do they go to get that care? You all know this. They end up at the emergency room. Emergency rooms that already are cluttered and oftentimes understaffed because government needs to be doing more in that specific area, especially at the federal level, and it hasn't. So this only compounds the problem for everyone, and also for those 16 million people that will lose their insurance, and those millions of people who will see their prices go up as well. For now, and people should know this, Medicare, Social Security, and Veterans benefits will continue. But staff at all of these agencies have been furloughed, reducing the number of staff available to meet requests. And alarmingly, our offices have been told that agencies are discontinuing congressional inquiries. Now, that's not right either, and I assure you that in spite of what they say, we will be inquiring on your behalf and make sure you call our office if you have a concern. Airports are operating as usual, but we are starting to see delays across the country. TSA agents and air traffic controllers are working without pay. That's flat out wrong, too. Please take these into consideration, however, if you're planning to travel during the shutdown, and plan well in advance. I know the commissioner will have something to say about SNAP benefits. They will continue at least for the end of this month. But if this shutdown continues past October the 31st, the Trump administration is threatening to pause SNAP entirely. I'm proud of the commissioner, and I'm equally proud of Governor Lamont, who I've spoken with on the phone several times. So they're going to step up to ensure that WIC nutrition benefits for women, infants, and children continue during this shutdown. I'm also proud of my colleague, Johanna Hayes, who's introduced the bill to ensure the state is reimbursed when they step up for these costs. We are working together as an entire delegation, and we'll be holding a press conference again tomorrow morning in Middletown, Connecticut, about the impact of this shutdown. But most importantly, we want to ensure that SNAP recipients are not impacted by this shutdown. Tonight, I'm proud that we have Commissioner Andrea Barton Reeves joining us. And with that, I would like to turn the floor over to her to have some opening remarks, and then we'll come back, say a little bit more about the healthcare crisis, and then open it up to questions. Commissioner, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the incredible work that you're doing, and thank you so much. As the author of the first family and medical leave bill in the nation, I was so proud of what you have done, ensuring that so many of our services and supports for thousands of our residents are taking place because of the work that you have done. The floor is yours, Commissioner.
Thank you, Congressman. And I do appreciate you inviting me to speak to your constituents today. As you said, we enter into week 3 of our shutdown. So as the Congressman mentioned, most of my time, especially over the last 3 weeks or so, have really been focused on trying to determine how we will continue to provide a much-needed benefit, an essential benefit of SNAP to our constituents if the shutdown goes past October 31st. But also, as the Congressman mentioned, we are also responsible in part for Obamacare in the state because Connecticut has its own version of it, often referred to as Covered Connecticut or CT or Covered CT. Under Covered Connecticut, it is our own version of the Obamacare exchange. It is a no cost to the participant plan, but our state relies on those subsidies that keep the cost down for all of the other parts of the Obamacare plan as well. Notices have gone out to many families from the Affordable Care Act perspective to let them know that their premiums will be going up anywhere from several $100s for some families to several $1,000s. This, of course, we know is completely untenable and patently unfair to so many hardworking Americans who rely on the exchange for affordable health care to keep themselves and their families healthy. I really do commend you, Congressman, for everything that you're doing to fight for the people of Connecticut, because not only is decent access to quality health care at risk, what is also at risk are the SNAP benefits that, if not fully funded in November, means that over 363,000 people in the state of Connecticut run the risk of having no SNAP benefit access after October 31st. We've sent notices to families to inform them of this issue, and we have been inundated by calls to all of our resource centers and our call centers with families who are frantic and deeply concerned, young people, working people, elderly people, all from all walks of life. This is now how we are intended to live in the United States of America, and it is completely unnecessary. What we need is the support of the federal government to come together and understand that we cannot and we no longer can engage in any kinds of brinksmanship. It is time to put the people of the United States first and their needs. And I am calling on particularly the Trump administration to really think about the people of this state and this nation first. And with that, Senator, I'm happy to go into some more statistics about SNAP, but I will turn it back to you and answer any questions that I can that your constituents might have.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. And let me, as we start down this path as well, and as this shutdown goes on, I know you're hearing a lot of conflicting information. That's why we think it's especially important that we have someone like the Commissioner that's on the line this evening, where you're going to get the straight scoop from. You're going to get the truth of what's actually happening and going on. Here's the truth, and I think all of you know this. First and foremost, Republicans control the White House. They have the majority in the House of Representatives and the majority in the Senate. If they wanted to end this shutdown tomorrow, they could by their own majority votes. It's that simple. But what they're doing is playing political games over Trump's failed policies, starting with tariffs and the cost of living that's gone through the roof, but also their budget that they passed in the so-called big, beautiful bill, that at the core of it, they're beginning to see what happens when you take insurance from 16 million people and watch insurance costs rise for everyone else. And as the commissioner stated, when you're taking nutritional benefits, that's what the SNAP program stands for. And it's just not children. It's also the disabled, it's also adults, it's also veterans that find themselves losing these nutritional benefits. If they wanted to keep government open today, they could, but they've packed their bags and left the town. But frankly, the Republicans in the House do not do anything that Donald Trump doesn't tell them to do. That's a fact. Speaker Johnson is merely, unfortunately, because there are equal branches of government and they have different responsibilities, but the House and the Senate are not acting on theirs. So this is where we stand. This week, Speaker Johnson and his colleagues hosted a press conference to say that Democrats are holding out so that undocumented immigrants can get free health care. That's flat out false and a lie, and has been discredited by everyone from the New York Times to CNN, but also by private sector entities and groups that have been very clear about it, whether it's here in Connecticut, Access Health CEO James Michael, and whether it's the nonpartisan Kaiser Family Foundation, has called this out true. And even the Trump website also says clearly that no immigrants can receive these benefits. It's that straightforward, but they continue to lie. This budget kicks 15 million people off of health care, which includes 167,000 people here in the state of Connecticut. And other Americans are preparing for skyrocketing premiums unless we can agree to restoring the Affordable Care Tax Credit. If we don't, that means 19,000 people in our district will see their costs rise. The average family of four will have to pay $2,571 more dollars next year. Believe it or not, it's rare that I find myself in agreement with Marjorie Taylor Greene, but she has broken with her own party because she's being truthful about the impact that these healthcare costs have on rural Americans as well as urban Americans. She's called what is happening unforgivable, that the children that she represents will be affected by this premium hike. We should all recognize that health care is a right and not a privilege for the wealthy few. The House hasn't been in session since September the 19th. Trump has told them to remain outside, not to negotiate with Democrats. They are paying lip service only. But we will continue this fight, and we'll be going back to Washington next week, even if they don't, to make the point that we're here on behalf of the American people to restore health care benefits so that people can not live under this particular cloud and put government back to work and end the shutdown. I have proposed a bill called Make America Govern Again. And here's the penalty. Currently, we see too many federal employees and other employees impacted by the shutdown, losing their jobs, not getting paid. Those aren't the people that shouldn't be getting paid during this. It should be the decision makers. That means all members of Congress. That means the president. That means his entire cabinet and all the agency heads. Those are the ones that should be going without a salary until this crisis is through and people come to the table, sit down, and move the government forward again. Everyday working Americans shouldn't be punished by the acts of a Republican-controlled House and Senate and a Republican president. And even if that means Democrats in Congress have to forego their salaries as well, so be it. But we should be sitting down the table and making sure that we're taking care of this. What we see here, and I think Chris Murphy said it best on the Senate floor, what he had to say is this: the authoritarian takeover isn't coming, it's actually here. And we've seen this, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or Chicago, the president trying to deploy our own troops. And actually, if you can believe this, summoning all the generals from around the globe to Virginia and telling him and using them as his own army and own police force and saying he summoned them here so that then to pull them back from their posts so we can deal with the enemies from within. Coincidentally, those enemies happen to be in states where there's a Democratic governor and in cities where there is a Democratic mayor. I don't think that that's any coincidence, but I'll leave that up to you to decide. Having made that statement and having said that I think the most important thing we can do is to get back to Washington, work out these issues, sit down and do what's right. And oh, by the way, we don't have to go behind closed doors to do that. We should be doing this in the open at public hearings so the people actually get to see what you're proposing and what Congress is voting on. There's no need to go behind a closed door. All you have to do is lay out what you stand for and then have a vote, up or down. That's how a democracy is supposed to work. We will continue to also conduct these hearings. This is the second we've had this week. And again, depending upon what events occur, we'll be hosting them next week. We'll be down in Washington on Tuesday, and we hope on Wednesday night, either from Washington or here in Hartford, to have another tele-town hall as well so that people can get their questions answered. And also, if you have a question that it doesn't get answered, please leave the questions with us, and my staff will get back to you. Now let us open up for questions and take the first question, Charles.
Thank you, Congressman. As a reminder to everyone joining us on the line tonight, if you have a question, you can press *3 now. We will begin taking questions from the audience. Our first question comes from Christina, who submitted a question online tonight, and she asks, does Connecticut plan to continue to guarantee access to vaccines at the state level?
Well, thank you, Charles, for that question, but I think this is right in the mainstream of the Commissioner's expertise, so I'll yield the floor to her, and then I'll add a comment myself.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. And unfortunately, it is not. That would be under the purview of the Department of Public Health, Commissioner Giuttani, who's not on the call this evening. But I can say that when the administration of vaccines was at risk in September, you may have recalled that there was a committee that had come together, and there was quite a bit of national consternation as to whether or not particular vaccines would be banned or whether we would have access to some. Connecticut did, in fact, step up through the Department of Public Health to make sure that our children had vaccines and that vaccines would be available. So that continues to be the case. And at the end of the convening of that particular body, it was determined that whether or not a person had access to a vaccine was really up to them and a decision to be made between them and their healthcare provider. But in this state, we have made as many vaccines available as possible, and that, as far as we know, will continue to be the case, particularly for children.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, and I'm sorry to have broadened your powers over the phone, but I also can't let this pass without acknowledging what many have heard our current Mr. Kennedy have to say with respect to vaccines. He replaced the vaccine recommendations panel with his own hand-picked conspiracy theorists. Let's be clear about this. People will die and get sicker because of those actions. We have called on him to resign. He has no medical background and no business being in this position. What I can tell you is that we have a leader in Governor Lamont and also at the Department of Health that is committed to do whatever they can to ensure continued access to vaccines for Connecticut residents. Our state is working with other states to bulk purchase where necessary and issuing recommendations to make sure people can still get COVID vaccines. Every state has their own laws when it comes to what state health commissioners can or can't do with regard to vaccine access. But in this day and age, with so many lives at threat, to deny the science behind vaccines is criminal. My office will continue to be in close touch with anyone who has an issue or a problem and work directly with the governor and all the appropriate agencies to make sure that people here, especially as the commissioner points out, our children, are getting the appropriate vaccines.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you, Commissioner Barton Reeves. Our next question comes from Ronald, who joins us live on the call tonight. And he has a question about some of the recent ballroom renovations that folks may have been seeing in the news. Ronald, you are
Yes.
live with the Congressman.
Thank you.
Hi, Ronald.
Yes, good evening. Hello?
And what's your question?
My question was, when is somebody going to put the brakes on Trump about renovating Washington and doing his own thing? The Constitution and whatever means nothing to this guy. You know, well, I can't say too much on the phone because I don't want to go to jail. Let's put it this way. But why is Congress and the Senate and everything allows this to happen?
Well, as you may have heard me say in the beginning, unfortunately, in our system, where people are duly elected, Donald Trump is the duly elected President of the United States. The House of Representatives is also duly elected, 435 members, and the majority are Republicans. So they control the House of Representatives as well. They also control the United States Senate, where there are 100 representatives. So, yes, while Democrats continue to speak out against the actions of this president, not the least of which is destroying the East Wing, you would think that instead of designing a new ballroom, a grand ballroom for himself at the White House, he would be more focused on the people that are out of work and because of the government shutdown are experiencing the hardships that they are, as well as the need for us to turn this economy around and get away from his tariff practices, which even the Wall Street Journal and economists and everyone are speaking out about in terms of what it has done to exacerbate the economic conditions that exist today. And so I appreciate your frustration. I assure you that it's shared by a number of people who will continue to speak out. And as Chris Murphy noted, yes, this isn't a drift towards authoritarianism. It's here. But together we have to work to stop it and speak out. What does that? The American people, not just the elected officials, but this past weekend was a great demonstration as well. Remember, they said that all this violence was going to happen this weekend and there would be all these unruly breakouts. There were none. All it was were American citizens speaking out on behalf of the kind of change that they desire and letting it be made clear that in this country there are no kings. We kneel to no one, and that it's a government of, by, and for the people, as Abraham Lincoln so eloquently stated. And it's the people that are speaking out that is going to have the influence that will change the minds of the recalcitrant Republicans who refuse to stand up to this president to date. I hope they join with us in pushing back and making sure we restore benefits that impact, as Marjorie Taylor Greene said, and I would never have thought I'd be an ally of Marjorie Taylor Greene's based on a lot of her philosophical beliefs. But she's right on this because she knows the impact that taking people off of affordable health care and what it will mean to them, including the fact that people will die. So we appreciate your frustration. Thank you for your question, but I assure you there are people that are fighting, but we need your voice as well. All voices are important. What Trump hopes is that people will be discouraged, that they won't turn out and vote. The most alarming thing to every American should be the statistic that in the last presidential election, more people didn't vote than who voted for both presidential candidates combined. When Americans start giving up on their democracy, that's when we have to worry. Rise up, America. Take back your government.
Thank you, Congressman. As a reminder for folks on the line, if you have a question, you can press *3 on your keypad. If you would like to sign up for the Congressman's newsletter to receive updates and information about future events, press *6. Our next question comes from Fran, who has a question about some of the news regarding Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva. Fran, you are on the line with the Congressman. Fran, are you with us? It looks like Fran might not be on, so we will go to our next question, which is Paul, who has a question about federal workers getting paid during the shutdown. Paul, you are live with the Congressman.
Hello, Congressman Larson.
Hi, Paul.
Thank you for taking this question. I'm asking about National Guard soldiers who are dual status technicians. They did not receive the recent paycheck that was dispersed, and obviously it may not be possible for even regular active duty troops to receive those paychecks going forward. So I was wondering if you'd be willing to support HR 5401, which basically would just ensure that soldiers and dual status technicians get paid throughout the rest of the fiscal year.
I fully support HR 5401. There's no need for this, Paul. I support our troops getting paid. They deserve to be paid. I'm a co-sponsor of legislation that would always provide for military payments. I've also introduced a bill that we call Make America Govern Again, that would pay all government employees who are missing payments through no fault of their own. The people that should be paying a price here are the decision makers. The decision makers are the president, the executive branch, and its agencies, and members of Congress in both the House and the Senate. That's who makes the laws. That's who can change these circumstances. Those are the ones, when government is shut down, who should feel the pain of no pay, not the rank and file per individual, members of our military, even contractors who work, who many of whom will lose pay altogether. This is flat out wrong. Americans should be outraged, and the law should be changed. Now, the Constitution does provide that people will be paid in the executive branch and in Congress. What I'm saying is the law should be changed so that when there's a shutdown and it's caused directly by the executive and by members of the legislative branch, those are the individuals that should bear the burden of the shutdown, not those that seek out to make a daily living and put food on their table and pay their rent and mortgages. Thank you, Paul, for your question, and we're going to keep on and be persistent about this. I know that many good Republicans feel the same way that I do about this, and they have to stand up and be willing to stand up to Donald Trump on this.
Our next question comes from Charles, who's joining us in East Hartford, and he has a question about Medicaid coverage. Charles, you are live with the Congressman.
Hi, Congressman Larson. The question I have is that I'm disabled and I'm bedbound, and I wanted to know if my Medicaid would be affected for my, the assistance that I have for home care and stuff like that. And also, for my food stamps for the month of November. Am I going to receive them or am I not? Because I was confused in the beginning when they were talking that they were going to give some stuff for WIC and different that. Were you saying that the Connecticut is going to help people with their food stamps or not? Can you answer them two questions for me?
Yes, I think we can, and I'm glad that I have the commissioner here with me.
Yeah.
In the short term, Medicaid funding is safe unless the shutdown lasts through 2026. So I emphasize in the short term. In the long term, the reason that Democrats are fighting so hard is because Republicans are putting these programs at risk. Thanks to the Republican budget, Connecticut is due to lose over $1 billion in Medicaid funding. That is not acceptable. And while the state then has to make a decision and decide to scramble how to fill that void, it's unnecessary. This is the responsibility, a shared responsibility between state and federal government. We need to repeal this bill, and it starts with forcing Republicans back to the table to stop their health care cost hikes on all Americans. Commissioner, any thoughts that you might want to add to that and to his question?
Yes. Yeah, so thank you, Congressman. With respect to Medicaid, the Congressman is absolutely right. We don't have a concern through 2026. So if you're hearing about changes to Medicaid, those have more to do with a specific population known as the expansion population. And those are people that we were able to add to the rolls of Medicaid based on some very generous rules under the Biden administration. We were able to add about 330,000 more people to the Medicaid rolls. They're commonly known in the state as Husky D. That population would be at risk for losing their benefits if they don't meet certain criteria, particularly what are known as work requirements. But you'll read them in the bill, the HR 1 bill, as I call it, as community engagement rules. But sir, if you are disabled and elderly and at home, it is very unlikely, first of all, that you're in that group of people. And next, even if you were, it's highly likely that you would be exempt from any of those rules. So I would check, but I would say from what you've just described in the few minutes that we've spoken, that those changes in the Medicaid rules would not apply to you. However, when it comes to the SNAP benefit, as I started out in the beginning of the call, they are at risk at the moment. The state has, and every state has benefit dollars only through October 31st. We recently sent notices explaining that those that have benefits on their cards, it would be prudent for them to exercise the use of that card and those benefits before the end of the month. We are really hoping that the Republicans in particular come to the table and continue to fund the SNAP benefit past October 31st. Absent that, every state, as you may have been reading, will have to make its own determination as to how it will fulfill the tremendous need that everyone will have who is receiving a SNAP benefit now. We are, and I am, and many of those that are supporting the governor, providing him a great deal of advice and support and counsel around the options that may be available. And he is considering all of those options, as is every other governor throughout the state. You may have heard that some of them have made different decisions based on their budgets and the availability of resources. I can tell you, sir, that this is top of mind for the governor. He's very much aware of it and is working as quickly as he can to determine what the right resolution would be for the people of the state of Connecticut.
Thank you, Commissioner. And let's take the next question, Charles.
Our next question is an online submission from George, who asks, why are federal workers going without pay while the Trump administration gives money to Argentina?
Well, George, that's an excellent question. For someone who campaigned on America First, he certainly isn't acting like that. It looks like he's placing Argentina over America here. This happens to be one of the president's allies, but he's bailing them out with a $20 billion gift. He's sending all that money overseas while federal workers are going without pay, and millions of Americans are about to see their premiums skyrocket. Trump has been clear that this is nothing to do with the economy or the benefit of the American people. He said that the money is contingent on his ally, the Argentinian president's party-winning and upcoming elections. I joined my colleagues on the Trade Subcommittee this week to launch an inquiry into the Treasury's decision to authorize this bailout of obviously one of Trump's allies. It's interesting that $20 billion is also how much it would cost to extend the health care tax credits for the American people. Let's talk seriously about putting America first, not your Argentinian buddies. I think it's clear where Donald Trump's priorities are. He should be working to end the health care crisis facing our families here at home, not bailing out another country to win points with an ally.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question comes from Cassandra, who's joining us from Southington tonight, and she has a question about ICE. Cassandra, you are live with the Congressman.
Hi, good evening. My question is, what steps are you taking to ensure ICE operations don't violate civilian rights and separate families unjustly?
Well, thank you, Cassandra, for that question. And certainly hailing from Southington, as you know, both in Newington, in Southington, most recently in Hamden, what we've seen in the state of Connecticut, in the Constitution state, we've seen people with black masks armed, not notifying state police, not notifying local police, not conferring with the governor or with any mayor, but coming in and snatching mothers from their children, all under the guise of ICE and that they're going after illegal immigrants. There is nothing more un-American than what they're doing. People wearing masks. It is a violation of the transparency and accountability we count on for our safety and for the safety of our constituents. Mass law enforcement in unmarked vans, that's not the America we know. Yes, I am co-sponsor of Protect Sensitive Locations Acts, which would bar ICE from arresting people in schools, hospitals, houses of worship, and social services offices. I've called on ICE to answer for its mass arrests of our residents and for the conditions of those locally detained. I also have authored a bill that would unmask these individuals. I have police officers that I work with closely, and one who works on my staff. They find this an abomination as well, because there's nowhere that you can cite in American law enforcement people wearing masks with guns. They are visibly identified and are an important cog in our democracy and in due process of law. Yes, there has to be enforcement, and clearly for people that are here illegally, but there is also due process, and more importantly, a process in which this should be followed in a manner that follows our Constitution. We are not an authoritarian regime. This is not Trump's own personal police force that he can use for his own disposal and then try to magnify via the airwaves that he's cleaning up a problem. Clearly, there is a problem that exists, but there is an appropriate way to address this, and this is not it. And when you're further summoning our military to Virginia and then telling them that you want them to use our cities as a training ground and saying because we have to deal with the enemy from within. Who is that enemy from within, Mr. Trump, and who are you going after? You are not a dictator or a king. You are subject to the Constitution. And hopefully, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will start speaking out and standing up about this. This is an atrocity. Anyone who's witnessed it or seen it understands and knows it, and we will continue to speak out against it. And hopefully, our colleagues find the guts and the spine to stand up to this president. I assure you, we will continue to do so, no matter what list I appear on or whatever. I consider it a badge of honor to be placed on his top 10 list, along with my colleagues like Hakeem Jeffries. And, it's just gets my blood boiling over the fact that this could be happening here in the United States of America and here in the great state of Connecticut. I'm proud that we have an Attorney General like Mr. Tong, who is standing up and fighting for our rights and winning every day. We are the Constitution state, and we are a nation that is governed by the rule of law, not by the dictates of an authoritarian leader. Sorry, I got a little heated there.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question comes from Jeff, who joins us from the district tonight, and he is a federal worker. Jeff, you are live with the Congressman.
Hi, good evening, Congressman. Thank you for taking my call. My question
Jeff.
to you, sir, is I thank you for your efforts as our representative in Washington, D.C. My question to you is, it seems to be that I see on the news an impasse as to who is actually in Washington and why this isn't considered an urgent issue where all congresspersons, senators, and high-ranking officials are not exclusively in Washington, D.C., actively working on this problem. I realize that there's an impasse, and I realize that the talking points are largely surrounding the Affordable Health Care Act, amongst other things, but I certainly am not able to debate those merits. That's yours and your colleagues' job. My question is, why is everybody not in Washington, D.C., actively trying to work through this nearly, at least 8 hours a day, every day? I keep seeing that some are recessing. I saw on the news that, the Democrats were complaining the Republicans were nowhere to be found, and vice versa. So I'm wondering if you could perhaps speak to that, sir, and tell me what your interpretation of that is.
Well, you're absolutely right, and we should be in D.C. We have been in D.C., but the Speaker has decided, in fact, it would astound most Americans if you knew since July the 5th, Congress has only been in session 19 days. That's not what I would call a full day's work. And it said, even though we've been down there and summoned by our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, we've been down there by ourselves. And the government buildings and facilities have been shut down in many respects and not accessible. We haven't been able to swear in a new person elected to Congress because Speaker Johnson has chose to close down the House. We have not been there since September the 19th. When I say we, I'm saying we as the House of Representatives. The Senate has been there, and the Senate has continued to vote. The House was supposed to be in session, but the Speaker, Johnson, decided not to show up, and Trump told him not to negotiate with Democrats, but to stay away from Washington. And they have. Unfortunately, the Speaker follows exactly what Donald Trump tells him to do. And until Trump tells him to reopen the government that he controls as a Speaker, or the Republicans in that caucus, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, continue to speak out and say, hey, we need to get back here. This is impacting too many people, especially the very federal employees that you mentioned and others. So you're absolutely right. Congress has a constitutional responsibility to be meeting on behalf of the people. We are not an authoritarian government, but under this president, he's dictating what happens in a separate branch of government. As you know, there are three branches of government: the executive, the legislative and the judicial. And in the legislative branch, they are co-equal branches of government. And yet, in the House of Representatives, they have thrown away their responsibility and disregarded our oath to the Constitution and the people we're sworn to serve. We do not take an oath of allegiance to Donald Trump. We take an oath of allegiance to the Constitution, and we should follow that out. Well, it's all coming to a head, and let us hope that members are like Marjorie Taylor Greene continue to speak out. And I think the more Republicans who find the courage are going to find the Democratic allies, as you say, to be back there and sitting down and making sure that we pass a budget. You may have been on at the start of this, and when you don't have the funding approved by September the 30th, meaning you haven't voted on the bill, you either have to do what's called a continuing resolution to keep government open while you're working on this, or you actually pass those bills. The logical thing to do is to come back under a continuing resolution, negotiate, and get those done. Our own Rosa DeLauro from the state of Connecticut has been leading the efforts on appropriations, where she's the ranking member and speaking out on this as well. We have a proposal that both keeps government open and also restores health care benefits, doesn't take it away. And next week we'll be having people on again, if we're not open again, talking about the impact that this is going to have, not only on the people who lose their health care insurance, but also on the costs that will rise and what that will mean and how that will exacerbate, as we've heard from other doctors and nurses and hospitals, the enormous health care crisis that the Republicans have caused for no reason other than cutting and taking away benefits so that billionaires can have additional tax breaks. Seems like they're doing pretty well already, that they need additional tax cuts on the backs, as the commissioner said, of taking food out of the mouths of people who need it and health care away from citizens who desire it. That's not the America we all know and believe. Get back to Washington and be there. And in the meantime, as you say, the people that should be penalized are the people that are responsible for the negotiations. And that includes myself and all members of Congress, as well as the executive branch and all of the cabinet members and all the heads of the agencies. Not the people that work for them, but the heads of the agencies. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Congressman. We have time for one last question tonight, so before I go to them, I would just like to remind folks, if we were not able to get to your question tonight, you can leave a voicemail following the event by calling 860-278-8888. Our final question comes from Julia, who has a question for the commissioner and the congressman about Medicaid. Julia,
Hi.
you are live with the congressman.
Hi, Congressman Larson and Commissioner. This is Julia Plunkett. I live in Hartford. I work for an access agency that supports older adults under Medicaid, kind of related to what a gentleman was saying earlier with disabled adults. We coordinate home care services like skilled nursing, personal care assistance, Meals on Wheels, and Life Alert buttons so people can stay safely at home. With all the talks about the big, beautiful bill and potential changes to Medicaid, a lot of us in this field are really worried about what could be lost. What should agencies like mine be preparing for? And in a worst-case scenario, what services or supports could disappear for our elderly clients?
Well, Commissioner, why don't I turn that over to you first, and then I will respond as well.
Sure. Julia, thank you for your question. From our analysis, as it relates to Medicaid, we don't see that many individuals. As I said, the primary cuts to Medicaid are those that are at risk in the Husky D population. There are fewer people that would be elderly and disabled in the Husky D population, and if they were, they would most likely be exempt from the work requirements in the new rules. As it relates to the way our Medicaid budget is currently constructed, we're not anticipating any significant changes to the long-term services and supports that we provide to the elderly and disabled. As you know, and we're so fortunate in Connecticut, we have a wide array of services that really allow people to live with dignity in their homes with supports for as long as they possibly can. And when that isn't possible, then we do have the ability for people to move to more skilled nursing facilities, also known as nursing homes. So at this moment, we are not anticipating any significant changes. I think, though, that in direct response to your question, you may have many of your clients who are going to be confused by all of the news that they're hearing and frightened, and rightfully so. But I would say that what you've offered as feedback in terms of how we can make it clear as to who is actually affected by the Medicaid changes is something that we can do a better job of at DSS. So I'm going to bring that back to my team to make sure that we can provide more information, more clarity about just what parts of Medicaid are directly affected by HR 1, so that you can speak to your clients in ways that can assure them as to what will remain the same and what will be different, and how they can determine whether or not those changes apply to them.
Well, Julia, thank you again for that question, and Commissioner, thank you for being able to articulate. I think the one thing that everybody can take away from this evening is we're blessed to live in the state of Connecticut. We're blessed to have a commissioner that understands what needs to be done, and blessed that we have a state where, and frankly, on both sides of the aisle, people are compassionate, caring, and are concerned. And I spoke with the governor earlier, and he was adamant about making sure that he's going to do everything within his power, everything they can, to make sure that clients like yours are going to be taken care of. It is, however, a shame that we should even be in this place, that there is a partnership that should exist at all three levels of government, between municipal, state, and federal levels, and especially as it comes to providing the crucial needs for our citizens. And whether it's supplemental nutrition or whether it's health care, these are vital. These are not, things that people, these are not frills. These are the basic essentials and necessities to carry on life. You know this directly because these are your clients. And please stay in touch with us. I think you can hear from the commissioner's response how they are willing to work and understand the kind of confusion. And again, it's not confusion on the state's part. It's confusion that has been caused by the action of the federal government. And they are responding to the federal government's action. So, and I think we have a delegation that will all pull together to make sure that we're doing everything possible to smooth out this bumpy road that we're in currently, and let us hope ends sooner rather than later, so we can get back to making sure that the citizens get to enjoy the benefits that they have become accustomed to receive, and do that in a manner that, in fact, helps out everybody. And that's from both a healthcare perspective and from a nutritional perspective, and also, frankly, from an international perspective as well. So with that, again, I can't thank Commissioner Andrea Barton Reeves enough for her willingness to join us this evening, and as well as for all the people who have called in and those who are listening on the line. We will continue to do these as long as this shutdown continues, to keep people informed and to continue to ask questions. If you didn't get your question answered and you had one, and I'm sure there are many that people have, please leave them with us and we will respond and make sure that you get your question answered. And with that, let me again thank the Commissioner, and Charles, turn it back to you, and thank everybody for listening in this evening.
Thank you for taking the time, everyone, to join us tonight for this important Access Live event with Congressman John Larson and Commissioner Andrea Barton Reeves. If we were not able to get to your question this evening, you can leave a voicemail after the event by calling 860-278-8888. Thank you, and have a great night.